George, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Ramon.
You can? Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right, does it look like we've got our webcasting in good shape today?
Yes, I put it in the chat, but I want you all to be aware we did already start the live stream, so
Wonderful.
don't do anything inappropriate. But yeah, we are good to go.
Hopefully that doesn't need to be specified, but you never know. It never hurts to remind. How are we doing on our attendance? Let's give it a minute. Wait for a few more folks to beep in. Hi, everyone. We've still got some more folks beeping in, so we're going to give it another minute before we get started. Hey, George. All right. Do we have Erinetta? Are you here with us yet? Not quite yet. What do you think? We're at 17 total. We ready to get started?
Yes, I think you can go ahead and start.
Okay, terrific. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our first quarterly meeting of the Alamo Citizens Advisory Committee. Hope everyone had a wonderful and safe holiday season. And now we're back. A lot of great stuff to go over tonight. And I will turn it over to our Tri-Chair, Councilwoman Viagran, who's live remote from the field. And we'll share a little bit with you about what we're up to this evening. Councilwoman?
Thank you. Can you all hear me first and foremost? Fantastic. Yep. Fantastic. Thank you, Thank you, Francisco, and thank you all again for joining us tonight. As discussed in the workshop in December, the committee will now host quarterly meetings, and you have them all on your calendars. And we really want to, I really want to just thank you all for the dynamic conversations that we did have in December. And we may add more meetings if it is necessary, but tonight's agenda includes updates on some Alamo Citizens Advisory Committee items and updates on the Alamo plan, design, and construction. And as always, comments and questions may be mailed to alamoplan@sanantonio.gov. We are live streaming this meeting, and the video will be available on YouTube and the city's website. So we're going to go and review some of the December 4th workshop, and very happy that the tri-chairs are also on board, and we have a lot to go through. So thank you all very much, and I'm going to pass it on to Lori Houston.
Okay, can you all hear me okay? Okay, good evening. I'm going to do a brief recap of the workshop. And I was able to attend to the workshop on December 4th. We had 15 members present. And the feedback from the workshop has been provided to our management committee. I believe that Andy Segovia has joined us, and he was able to participate in that workshop on December 4th, along with Councilmember Rebecca Villagran. At that workshop, we went over our management structure. So we've had a lot of questions from the committee about, what is their role, who do they report to, and how is the information being shared with the overall project leadership. And so we presented this organizational chart that really shows, where each of the pieces fall. So as you can see, we have the Alamo project at the very top. And as you can see, it says it belongs to the people of Texas. Well, who's managing that project? We have the Alamo Management Committee. So the Alamo Management Committee includes 2 representatives from each party. So we have 2 from the city, which include Andy Segovia and Councilmember Rebecca Villagran, 2 from the state, which include Hector Valle and Jeff Gordon. They're from the General Land Office, and 2 from the actual Alamo Trust, which include Hope Andrade, as well as Kate Rogers, who's the CEO of the Alamo Trust. So that is the entity that's responsible for really the day-to-day operations and leadership. They're the contracting entity for the actual construction of the project. Now, below them, there are several entities that kind of comprise of that group, and I already went through it, the trust, the GLO, and the city of San Antonio. But each of those entities has their own subcommittee that's responsible for a certain component of the project. So the Alamo Trust, underneath that, you have the Museum Planning Committee. And the Museum Planning Committee reports the Alamo Trust, and it includes a diverse group of individuals, and they are responsible for helping keeping the museum project on time. And they also look at the actual content development throughout the project. Now, that Museum Planning Committee is important to note that it's underneath the Alamo Trust, because the Alamo Trust is funding the museum, and it's also going to be operated by the Alamo Trust. And then you also have Remember the Alamo Foundation, and that is the group that's raising the funding necessary to construct the museum and other non-city funding components of the project. Now, under the city of San Antonio, we have the Alamo Citizens Advisory Committee. This committee was created by the city of San Antonio. It includes approximately 30 members, and we have our 3 tri-chairs, which include Erinetta Pierce, Sue M. Pemberton, and Councilmember Rebecca Villagran. Now, the Alamo Management Committee has a member on the Citizens Advisory Committee, and that is Councilwoman Villagran. So there's some consistency there. I'd also like to note on the Museum Planning Committee, we have Carrie Lattimore and Dr. Sharon Skabarsik, who are also on the Museum Planning Committee, along with Councilmember Rebecca Villagran. So there is some overlap to make sure there's more communication within the project. If there is a question or a concern about the project, or if feedback needs to be provided regarding the project, the best way to get that is through your tri-chairs. And the tri-chairs will provide that information to the management committee. Now we have Andy Segovia. He is a management committee member. He listens to these meetings when he can, as well as Councilman Villagran, who's at every one of these meetings. Any information that is shared through the Alamo Citizens Advisory Committee, these members consider it when making decisions related to the project. But if you have a question or a concern, the best way to get that to the leadership of the overall project is through Councilmember Villagran or Andy Segovia. But the tri-chairs, I do not want to discount their importance and the value. They meet regularly with Councilman Villagran, and so any information they're sharing is provided to Councilman Villagran, who carries that to the management committee, to the other partners. Now, you'll see there's a little box that says the Office of Historic Preservation and the Texas Historic Commission. Failed to mention that, but they are responsible for design review of certain components of the project. So THC will provide design review of the overall project, and Historic Preservation, or HDRC, will provide design review of the plaza and other city-owned public spaces. Next slide, please. Now, I want to remind everybody how we got to this point. The Citizens Advisory Committee was created in 2014, and several of you on this Zoom call were part of that 2014 effort. And we worked to create a vision and guiding principles between March and November of 2014, and those were adopted by City Council in December of 2014. And those vision and guiding principles remain intact, and they are attached to several agreements between the city, the General Land Office, and the Alamo Trust, and they remain the foundation for this project. Now, October of 2015, we created a cooperative agreement that reestablished the Alamo Citizens Advisory Committee. So for those of you involved in 2014, you'll recall that it was really being led by the city of San Antonio, and the General Land Office did not want to participate in the project. Well, with the re-election, with the election and the appointment of George P. Bush as General Land Office and the commissioner, we had a new partner that wanted to work with us on the Alamo. And that was new because we never had all three partners who were willing to work on this project. And so we created what we refer to as a cooperative agreement, and that was between the city, the state, and our private partner, which would have been the Alamo Trust. That cooperative agreement really served as a framework for how the project would move forward. In May of 2017, we presented to City Council a master plan that was created through a public process, and we had several public meetings, and the Alamo Citizens Advisory Committee was engaged. And in May of 2017, Council adopted that master plan. But what it really did was say, okay, we like where you're going. Please work over the next year to refine some of these items and come back to City Council for the approvals, because we knew the master plan called for the street closure, the relocation of the cenotaph, and other components that required additional steps. So that work took place between May of 2017 and August of 2018. And the Alamo Citizens Advisory Committee met several times prior to presenting the final conceptual plan to City Council in October of 2018. And with that plan, we also adopted the lease agreement. So we had several site strategies, which were the street closure, the relocation of the cenotaph, as well as the lease agreement that granted General Land Office control of a certain part of the plaza, provided they met certain milestones. Well, then we were quiet for about 3 years. And then after that, there were a lot of concerns about the project. And more importantly, THC denied a permit for a key component of the Alamo plan. And as a result, we had to revisit the plan. And through Mayor Nurnberg's leadership, he asked us to revisit that plan and look at several of these components. And we re-engaged the Alamo Citizens Advisory Committee And that was something that was specifically identified in the mayor's letter was, I want you to work with the Citizens Advisory Committee to revisit these items and come back to council. And we did that. And in April 2021, City Council approved the restated and amended lease agreement with the General Land Office. So there have been several steps throughout this process, and the Alamo Citizens Advisory Committee has been engaged in each one of these. And that is why we're here today. And I want to stress that that key extension in May of 2017, when we adopted the Alamo Plan, they extended the cooperative agreement. And that extension was through design and construction of the project. Now, the Citizens Advisory Committee's role, it's really to provide citizen input in an advisory capacity to the management committee. So we have our 2 management committee members on this call, but Councilman Villagran is at every one of our meetings. And so they are here to listen to your concerns and share that with the management committee. And they also, key to this is to make sure that it's in line with the vision and guiding principles that were created by the Citizens Advisory Committee. Now, this was also revisited in the amended and restated lease agreement. And we specifically called out the Citizens Advisory Committee and stated that the cooperative agreement created by the Executive Committee includes 2 members from each of these entities, and the City of San Antonio and the General Land Office and the Alamo Trust would make sure that the vision and guiding principles were a foundation to that agreement. Next slide, please. It also specifically states that we will work with the Citizens Advisory Committee as identified in the cooperative agreement. And it clearly talks about making sure that we are telling all the stories and have high quality programming. And that is something that we want to make sure that we hold the General Land Office and the Trust to do. And they've provided a quality program to date, and they'll continue to do that and continue to develop that quality program with their museum planning committee and other stakeholders. Next slide. And then, Ray, is this where I stop or do I go? Okay, I'm going to pass it on to Francisco Ganimo, and I apologize for that question.
Sorry about that. One of the things that we talked about at the retreat was essentially that we're really at a stitch in the process. You all have worked really hard over the last year, looking at a lot of issues, looking at a lot of different items, especially in the summertime. And so now, we want to be able to really move into a marathon state of mind. As Lori said, this is going to be a long haul. And so one of the things that we've heard from you in the past is that you all really wanted to be able to kind of have assurances that there was going to be routine and regular meetings, and that's where the quarterly meetings come in that Lori talked about. But one of the things that was also a really thoughtful point that came up at the retreat was, Ramon made the point of, well, as we continue to do our work going forward, what is the definition of consensus that we'll go by? And so one of the things, as Lori was just talking about, as we've kind of reconnected with what the structure and essentially framing mandate is for the Alamo Citizens Advisory Committee, the responsibility of this group is to deliberate and give thoughtful consideration to different issues coming forward, and then really impart that to Councilwoman Villagran and to Andy Segovia as the city's champions as part of the management committee. And so it's really clear, or it's really important that we all be clear, this is not a voting body, this is a consultative body. But having said that, we want to be able to have clarity around what is the council and what is the voice that is being given to our management committee representatives. And so there's this series of what we're calling degrees of consensus, so that we're really giving thoughtful consideration to differing perspectives depending on what we're talking about. Sometimes it might just be participation and consultation. It may not be something that really needs to be deliberated. It may be Councilwoman Villagran and Andy saying, hey, this item is coming up. We want to get your thoughts on it. So for example, later on in this evening's conversation, we're going to talk a little bit about the Fiesta routes and what we're hearing about reverent zones and things like that. That this is going to be the first time that Fiesta is transiting through Alamo Plaza since the agreement was updated. And so that's really participation in a consultation, right? Our two management committee representatives want to have some conversation in the group and just hear differing perspectives. And then they're going to take that under advisement and they're going to move forward to the management committee and represent what they heard and represent the interests of the city as they best understand them. Now, in other cases, there's going to be times where we really do turn to you and say, you know, we really want to, you know, have a weight of consensus one way or the other about what we're talking about. And if the item is one where really there is total agreement from the group, we're going to really designate that by name as unanimous agreement. 100% of folks present were in agreement of whatever the consensus position was that was arrived at. Now, it's important to note, gang, the nature of this process is that the Alamo Citizens Advisory Committee exists as a body, not as a set of individuals. So as they say in most raffles, you must be present to win. All right, so while as individual members, you always have the prerogative to send your thoughts, ideas, and concerns to our two management committee members and to our three tri-chairs. If you really want to share a thought or get something across, it really is the convenings and the work of the body that formally inform the work of the management committee members going forward. So in some instances, we may deliberate something and really feel like, gosh, the weight of the group, the kind of large majority of the group is really in agreement, but there may be some folks that we're not necessarily in agreement, and kind of in the parlance of professional facilitators, when we're working around consensus, which is different from unanimity, if we have a preponderance of the group that is in agreement, the facilitator, whether it's me or a future facilitator, will turn to the group and the folks that are not in agreement and will ask, can you live with it? Can you live with it? And if the individuals, albeit in disagreement, don't have a passionate concern with what's going on, they may say, you know, we don't agree, we see it otherwise, but yes, we can live with it. And so we're going to call that a true consensus. And why that matters is we may have deliberations, and I'm sure we often will, that happen in executive session, but we do have a duty to the public when we're conveying a written opinion to be able to accurately reflect what the nature of the input from the community representatives, that's you, was. And so true consensus wasn't unanimous. There was a preponderance of agreement, and those that were in dissent can accept and abide by the will of the group. And so in the case of a true consensus, we're being clear that it wasn't unanimous, but we're not naming explicitly individuals that were in dissent. And then that takes us to our last category, which is conditional consensus. As several members pointed out, there may be instances, you know, a number of you are here representing a particular caucus, right? A particular segment of community that has very serious consideration around being represented as a particular segment of the community. And on some occasions, we may have dissenting views that are quite passionate, and where those individuals really want to make it clear that they were in kind of specific objection to the group's consensus. And so when we arrive at a conditional consensus is when we do have the preponderance of the majority of the group behind a consensus view, but the outliers in this case would say, no, I really can't live with this. I really, I feel like this is the wrong call, and I want and need to be on the record as being in strong disagreement with the consensus position, and that is your right. And so in the case of a conditional consensus, we'll actually designate it in the notes of the meeting as a conditional consensus whenever an opinion is documented. And any individuals that ask to be will be designated in the notes as having been in dissent and in opposition to the consensus view. And we're actually going to offer the opinion, kind of like the Supreme Court, to have a brief write-up of the dissenting position, right? So that for posterity's sake, things were really transparently documented and nobody feels like they were ever misrepresented as being with the whole of the group in a position where they feel a strong, passionate disagreement. So we owed that to you after the retreat so that everyone knew that we were really committing to this going forward. So I want to pause here and ask, does anyone have any questions or concerns about what we're describing here? Erinetta?
Hi, yes. Where does that, if someone does dissent and it becomes a conditional consensus, does that stay within the body of the ACAC, or is that the end of it?
No, this is part of what we talked about is now that we're moving into this consultative frame, even when we're in executive session, we do have a duty to provide written opinions to our management committee representatives, right? So that there really is a record of the deliberations of the group. We will not document the back and forth, right? The scrum of the deliberation itself, but when we do arrive at an opinion, that document will actually, the proceedings document will essentially outline what the consensus reached by the group was. And so in the case of the conditional consensus, that is where an individual is saying, I want to be on the record as having been in dissent, right? And so in that case, Erinetta, that specifically and purposefully will not stay inside of the group. It'll be documented for public record because the individuals that were in dissent felt strongly that that was important, that they really give that voice. However, in instances where maybe there wasn't unanimity, but it's more at a level of just kind of perspectives and not necessarily at a level of kind of values disagreements, someone may say, I'm not going to die on that hill. Okay, I will abide the consensus of the group, even though I don't necessarily concur with it. And in that instance, we would not document for public record who was in dissent. We'll simply just articulate that it was not a unanimous agreement. Does that answer your question, Erinetta?
I think so.
Okay.
If I could add that real quickly on
Please.
that question, the management committee, as they listen to input from the city or the city council, will often ask, as appropriate, what does the Citizens Advisory Committee think about it? And this helps us convey that, as Francisco pointed out, there was unanimous support, or there was consensus support, or there was support, but there were some strong people who disapproved or didn't approve of what was being proposed. So it helps us communicate to both the management committee and the city council as to what this group thinks about any particular issue.
Great.
Thank you.
Next slide. So just then to complete our report out for all of you on the work that we did on December 4th, we got an opportunity to see an updated draft, an evolution from what this group saw previously of the narrative outline, and the body had an opportunity to really take a good look at it, offer comment, and offer recommendations to our management committee members of things in the narrative outline itself that were of concern, and they have received that and are carrying that forward. But then the group also participated in a thematic examination of, were there any themes of concern, themes that they felt were not given due treatment in their understanding of the vision and guiding principles for our two champions on the management committee to raise those concerns as needing a closer look beyond what was articulated in the outline. So just to briefly share, what were the themes that the group at the retreat identified as really needing more work, needing a closer look. There are continuing questions about what is the forward-going process and how all the parties will play together. There was a desire for a closer look at what did the battle itself mean to both the post-battle period and the contemporary future. There was a strong view that there was not adequate treatment of the issue of non-free labor and enslaved individuals and the role that played in the events around the Alamo. There was a desire to hear more specific detail around how contemporary voices will be included in speaking to the events of the past, especially for those communities that have less archival record, but a strong narrative tradition dating back to the folks living during that time. There was also a lot of importance placed on giving more deliberate focus to the Camposanto, the cemetery, and its history around the site, and really naming that. Also, that the outline was not felt to make much emphasis of the Mission San Antonio de Valero in the context of the larger mission network, and so how might that be given more focus in the narrative outline. Additionally, what was the experience of local populations in the battle, and kind of skipping a couple of that. One of the things that was rich conversation was it's important not to flatten and generalize the Mexican perspectives during that time, that there were a lot of Mexicanos and Tejanos that were on many different sides of the battle and the events that followed. And likewise, and this was a very thoughtful comment, the same is true of many of the Anglo participants around the events of the Alamo, that it wasn't a monolith, and that there were many different folks that had different relationships to the community of San Antonio and to the battle itself. And so that it was important to really tell all of those stories. Additionally, there was also a comment made, we spent a lot of time during the content sessions this summer hearing really rich, thoughtful, evidence-based history on the political perspectives that informed the broader context going into the battle, and that the narrative outline didn't really reflect the richness that we learned about this summer, and the desire to see more of that. And then also, finally, talking more about the influence that the battle and the events that follow played in the long pursuit of civil rights in Texas and San Antonio, and then the events that followed well into the 20th century. So these were the themes that were identified by the group as needing more thoughtful consideration. I would look to Andy and Councilwoman Villagrán. Is there any additional comment, anything I missed that you heard that was significant?
I think this captures very well what at least the conversations that I was part of during that offsite, which I thought was very productive. And so I do appreciate the summary here of what the key themes were. And again, they seem to be consistent with what I heard.
Terrific. Councilwoman? Great. I know she's wearing two hats this evening, so she may have stepped away for a moment. So then coming back, now we're going to move into some of the updates. So Rhea, if I could, oh, sorry. One of the most important things, I almost forgot. So one of the things that we know from kind of good principles and practices of volunteer management, and you all are community volunteers that have donated a not small amount of your time over the last year, and many of you for a number of years, to this process. And so good practice dictates that we really have a duty to you to create regular intervals for being able to acknowledge and celebrate your contribution, and giving you the opportunity to name that you have now served to the extent of your desires and the degree to which it kind of fits into your life obligations. And so what we wanted to do between now and next session is give each of you an opportunity to thoughtfully discern whether you feel good about your contribution and would like to conclude it at this point and make way for other community voices to keep the good work going, or whether you'd like to continue in your role. What we're hoping to do, fingers crossed, is at our next quarterly meeting, if public health circumstances permit and we can actually meet in person, it would be the 1-year anniversary of the reboot and the updated plan going to council for approval. So it seemed like a timely moment to do a little volunteer appreciation and thank and acknowledge all of you for your considerable gift of your time to the people of San Antonio. And additionally, for those of you that feel like I'm proud of what I've gotten to contribute, and now I need to attend to other things in my life, so I will step off here. It's an opportunity for us to really honor and acknowledge the great gift of our that you gave to the people of our city. So we really want all of you to recommit to staying in this work for the year ahead, rather than feeling like you are trapped by an open-ended, never-ending obligation. We want everyone that's here to be wholehearted in being here. So give that some thought. Between now and the April 26th session, you'll be hearing from Rhea to invite you to really actively recommit to another year of service as part of the Alamo Citizens Advisory Committee. And we want you to really know and hear and believe from us, if that is not in line with your life priorities right now, we honor that. That is absolutely a legitimate and acceptable response. And we will take the opportunity on April 26th to thank you and celebrate you for your faithful service. So we really wanted to put that out there so that you could sleep on it and then let us know if you're up for continuing the good work. So with that, I will turn it over to Rhea for some of our updates. Rhea?
Thank you, Francisco. As you all know, we hosted several content discussion meetings last summer. Those were at Alamo, a place to call home, that explored the different people and groups that called the Alamo home. Still standing, the trend of the specific buildings, the Battle of the Alamo through 3 lenses: perspectives, choices, and motivations. The history of unfree labor at and around the Alamo, which looked at slavery and the Spanish caste system. Fort Alamo, that looked at the different changes that the Mexican and U.S. military made. Who's Who, Where, and When, that explored political factions and demographics leading up to the battle. And of course, the civil rights movement connection to Alamo Plaza after the battle. We brought in 27 experts to participate on the panel and as speakers in these 7 meetings. We were able to host them at 5 different locations throughout town. And thank you again to all of our committee members who served as theme captains that really helped to put these sessions together and helped with that planning. They were live streamed at the time on YouTube. They've now been edited and translated into Spanish. We added introductions by the tri-chairs, Mayor Nuremberg, Judge Wolf, and Councilwoman Villagran, and outros, and we added some slides that listed the vision and guiding principles. Those have been added to YouTube, and they're on the city's webpage, and they have been airing on TVSA, so check them out. If you haven't seen them, they look pretty good. During the Alamo Plan reset last year, the city made a commitment to initiate an archival investigation of city-owned property on the Campo Santo footprint. The scope included a synthesis of all the previous archaeological reports and documentation that encountered human remains on the site, and a discussion of areas that need further review. We established a committee with staff and the 3 members of this committee that represent history and archaeology, and that's Ramon Vasquez, Dr. Carrie Lattimore, and Dr. Sharon Skrabarsik. That committee met over the summer and helped guide development of this report. You saw a draft presentation of this in September, and then the final draft was submitted to the city in December. and our committee has reviewed it and provided comments, and so we're in the final stages of completing that report. We'll be meeting with that committee later this week to discuss next steps, and so that includes development of our human remains treatment plan and how we will engage representatives from all those local descendant groups, which we talked about last year. So that is in the works, and we'll provide an update in the future on all of that. We do have a couple of updates on the major projects going on at the site. As you know, we've had phase 1 under construction for a little while, and that scope includes improvements to Crockett and Bonham Streets with these brick pavers that you see here, and new landscaping and lighting and security. That is on schedule to be complete at the end of February this year. So we're getting pretty excited about showing that off. It looks good. Here's just another view of those pavers going in. They're pretty labor intensive, so we brought in extra crews to make sure that gets done on time. Construction is underway for the exhibition hall and collections building. You saw a presentation on this last year as well. And that includes temporary exhibit space to host some of that Phil Collins collection, and a state-of-the-art collections vault to house that as well. It is still on track to be complete at the end of this year. There's just another view of the building pad at the collections vault. You know, we continue to coordinate with the Texas Historical Commission on the necessary permits for all of this. The next ones we will be requesting are for geotechnical boring around the Crockett Block, Palace Theater, and Woolworth buildings, and that will be to inform the design of the museum site. Permits were already approved for the cenotaph investigation and the temporary bollard installation that you saw in November. That work has been delayed a little bit, but we'll keep you posted on that. Last November, we reviewed this, but we want to give you more of an update. As we discussed and voted on during the Alamo reset meetings in the spring, the Fiesta Parades will continue to go through the site, and they will observe a reverent zone from Houston to Crockett Street. This route shows the final parade route, but we know there'll be some years that it'll be rerouted because of construction. And this year it's going to travel down Avenue E and then to Houston and then south on Alamo Plaza. The 2020 parades will go through, and they will have seating allowed, and those are on April 8th for the Battle of Flowers and April 9th for the Fiesta Flambeau Parade. Parades will observe a reverent zone, and there will be, like I said, there will be seating, but it'll be the last year of the grandstands. And the management committee and the Fiesta organizers are working together on all of this and what that's going to look like in the future. There were some reverent zone guidelines provided to the Fiesta organizers, and this is kind of a working document. The Alamo had asked parade participants to really come up with their own creative ways that they could pay tribute and be reverent in the zone. And so some appropriate tributes might include displays of remembrance, such as flowers, musical tributes to the fallen, including single instrument performances or the playing of taps, and special recitations or remarks. What will not be permitted is amplified music, confetti guns, air horns, and shouting or other loud behavior. So like I said, they'll expect all parade participants to be respectful as they cross the grounds, and we're working together with them on that. So that is what we have. You want to take it over, Francisco?
So I'll tag in here. We wanted to have some good conversation on this. Councilwoman Villagran really wanted to consult with the group. So I will turn it over to you, Councilwoman.
Thank you. Thank you all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. You know, this is the last year, and just years forward, the parade route will be changing because of just the construction downtown and the construction in the front area. And I know that we, Andy and I have discussed with Alamo to make sure that we continue in conversation with the Fiesta Commission. And so we'd love to get your feedback here. And I'm going to pause and just share that this is for 2022. And just hear some feedback. And Andy, I'm going to leave it to you to take notes as well.
So
I'll be happy to do that, Councilwoman.
Good. So the floor is open. What are any questions or thoughts you may have on this?
Thank you for the update. The only question, not question, it's just so I know last time or a couple meetings back, my concern was on the route for the parade. Back in the 90s, we had that front area closed, the street closed because of the threat of the Campos Santos, right? The cemeteries being, and the fact that there would be cars and parades going over the cemetery. And city ordinance, was passed to close that street. And so I was just wondering if that's going to be taken into account as well, undoing that city ordinance and then reopening that area, and the same concerns are still there. So basically, I guess it's a concern, not a question. Thank you.
Next.
Fire on the floor for the Fiesta Commission. We have seen the Fiesta Commission and the parade organizers have seen this reverent zone proposal, and we are indeed working with the state and with the city and with the trust, and trying to work on ways that we can make Fiesta an appropriate experience, but still preserve the heritage and history of Fiesta in San Antonio, and which is always included going by the Alamo and honoring the heroes of the Alamo, honoring and celebrating our city's diversity at the Alamo as a traditional meeting place in our city. And we look forward to continuing to visit about that. I would say that one of the historical activities that we specifically mentioned in our discussions with the city, and which in the first round of this was the Flambeau's concern that the UT band continue to be able to march and perform the Eyes of Texas. That was specifically mentioned in agreements with the city. And I know that's still remains an issue that they want to discuss, and how exactly that folds into the concept of a reverent zone. And I think that certainly things like confetti guns and air horns and amplified music is those sorts of things. I think as the Alamo project continues to progress, I think that space will naturally lend itself to reverence. That certainly is the hope, and there will be a differentiation between the areas around the Alamo versus when you actually enter the premises, enter the boundaries. And it's going to be a great parade that goes through there, and we certainly want to work with the city and all stakeholders to keep that experience to keep it in the spirit and recognize what has been accomplished through the Alamo project. And we all adapt and change with each other in this city, and Fiesta is something that is part of our cultural heritage, and we certainly want it to continue. We appreciate the efforts to see to it that it can continue around the Alamo, and we look forward to continuing to have discussions about that, and hopefully planning in working with the city on parade routes and construction activities, so that because through staging of those activities, I think we can achieve minimal disruption to the routes, but we all just have to work together, and right now that's what we're doing. So we
Thank
look
you,
forward
Byron.
to continuing.
Appreciate that. Other thoughts, questions, perspectives?
I was a little unclear. Does amplified music mean that a band can play? What is amplified music as opposed, does that mean a band cannot play? I'm just not clear.
I think some floats, for example, have music amplified from the floats, and that's that's what we're referring to with amplified music.
And as for bands?
Bands, again, we're working with the stakeholders on that. The thought would be that the bands, if allowed to play, which what we were envisioning, would be playing songs appropriate to the reverent zone. For example, that's why we always use taps as an example.
And I'm not clear, what was the reference to the Eyes of Texas? Is that traditionally played there?
It is by the Longhorn Band, and that was something that the Flambeau had in its previous agreements on this subject. And I don't know that having the Longhorn Band go through and play taps is going to be quite that experience. So again, it's something that I think needs to be discussed and fully fleshed out. It's one thing to have loud rock music amplified going through, but playing traditional band music that is same kind of music that's played at lots of events where there's reverence and pomp and circumstance. I don't know that that's really this. I don't know that having a band perform in formation a traditional song is necessarily irreverent any more than it would be irreverent to have the band from Lackland march through and play the Air Force song. So I think there's discussion to be had on that from our perspective.
Ramon?
I just wanted to, if Erinetta's, were you done, Erinetta?
Yes.
So just in response to that, I think we have a great opportunity, right, to help not only our stakeholders to see how this site is going to be revisited or reseen, reshaped, however you want to say it, but the citizens of San Antonio as well, right? And I think that's so important. So if we have a quiet zone for a block and a half, that may say a lot to how how this site will be treated in the future, when in the rest of the days that Fiesta doesn't exist. So that's just food for thought. It's just something to consider.
Additional thoughts? George? George, you're muted? There you go. No, still muted. Yeah, I'm showing you as unmuted, but no sound is coming through. So I don't know. You may have. There you go. Whatever you did, that fixed it.
Okay, we're reaching one of those intellectual and kind of historical ironies right now in this conversation. The very essence of the fiesta was to commemorate the Battle of San Jacinto, which is kind of like the full circle that was began at the Battle of the Alamo. And it just seems so strange that there's even some kind of disagreement or conflict between those who choose to celebrate the Battle of San Jacinto victory and those who want to preserve reverence at the Alamo, because that's the full circle of those 48 days or whatever it was in Texas history. I disagree with celebrating either one, but it just is an interesting thing about the schizophrenia and the bipolarism of the whole Alamo conversation, that those who are celebrating the Battle of San Jacinto would be in any kind of disagreement or any kind of conflict with those who are talking about the reverence of the Alamo, because it's one event. You know, that particular 48 days of human history is basically one event. So it is very strange that we're even having this conversation. There are many things in tonight's conversation that bother me. One is the easy exit that you're providing those of us who feel frustrated to leave the committee. Y'all have offered us a very easy way just to think about it. And then also this whole Soviet concept of consensus that we're seeing in how we are making decisions. And I just sort of feel that the whole committee itself is being put at a lower level of recognition and priority at this point, because the plan is in place. They're going to do what they're going to do anyway. And by lessening our impact and putting this in the area of consensus, you know, it's not a very strong voice. So those are just my thoughts tonight. I'm going to be around. I'm going to stick around. And I've been studying whether I can do more to fight for the cause outside the committee or inside the committee. And a number of people in the community are saying, if we stay on outside of the committee, we don't have to be so nice. But I do feel that what I've learned from you and this committee has been so intense and life-changing that I want to stick around. But I do feel that tonight's conversation is an admission that ACAC's role has been seriously diminished, because the plan is in motion, and that's what's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, George. And just to clarify one thing, we're not encouraging anybody to step down. We'd love to see all of you continue, but we also feel like it's disrespectful to you to just assume that it is a forever obligation and that there is no way to graciously step back. So please stay. We'd love to have all of you stay, but we just wanted to give you the opportunity to choose rather than to force your obligation. So to clarify that. Additional thoughts or comments? Questions?
Are we talking about thoughts and comments about this reverent zone or the total presentation at this point?
You know, at this point, I would open it up. You know, this is a good moment to just hear kind of from you where you're at. So yes, go right ahead.
Okay, what I want to point out is that flow chart of committee that we showed earlier, and the kind of up near the top off to the left, the communications and approvals needed from THC and the Historic Design and Review Committee. There's no lines going into that box. Who is going to step by step keep those two groups informed, since they're going to make decisions on the plan? And we already saw them make one decision that derailed us for 3 years. So I don't know who communicates with them, and will we be kept up to speed on asks for them and what where they're at? What are they, with us or against us or what? I'm interested.
Bill, that's a
Lori?
great question, and I want to add that one of the reasons why the Alamo project, it still resides in the city manager's office, but we've engaged the Office of Historic Preservation to have more of a role. And so Shannon Miller has been more engaged in this project, and she will keep HDRC involved. And THC, we've been having constant communications and do regular updates through the Alamo Trust. And so that relationship has been improved, and we will provide regular updates to this committee as to what permits will be pulled, so you're not caught off guard in the paper like you have been in the past. And so the next section of this conversation is going to be a presentation on construction updates and what we'll be requesting for THC in the future.
That answer your question, Bill?
Yeah, thank you, Lori.
Awesome.
Just keep us posted.
Terrific. Other thoughts from the group? We've got a lot of folks that we haven't heard from tonight. We'd love to hear any questions or reflections that you've got.
I guess one other question. What is the need for the parade route at whatever year it is to take that big swing in Alamo Plaza and change traffic lanes? I didn't understand that. Why doesn't it just go straight down the Alamo Street until you get to Commerce?
I can, as a resource, I can answer what's been presented to the Fiesta Commission, which is that based on the way that the installations and final layout of the Alamo grounds there is going to be, we'll be coming up on a balustrade or something that requires the parade to make that turn, because and I don't know whether it's the fire lanes or what have you, but there isn't going to be an opportunity for the route to go straight, or for any traffic to go straight when the barriers are taken down. And for all I know, that's the same for fire equipment and whatever. That's the entrance starts a little bit higher and ends a little bit lower.
Rhea, can you address that, please?
Yes, that's correct, Byron. And Bill, I'll send you that presentation. We reviewed it last year, I think in November. But when the plan is complete, there'll be a more permanent interpretation of the 18-pounder exhibit where it is now, and an interpretation of the South Gate, and then the Palisade exhibit is up. And so the parade needs to travel, south between the buildings and the cenotaph, and then it needs to avoid, that South Gate interpretation at the south end of the plaza. So that's the reason it looks like that.
It'll swing over, go past the front of the Menger, then make a right turn by H&M, and then a left turn back onto Alamo.
Yeah, it'll, just kind of snake through to avoid interpretation in the site. But, the designers have looked at it. We'll have opportunities for bleachers and everything, so.
Terrific. Sue-Ann, you're next. I do have a comment though. I realize I missed a couple of comments in our chat, so I do want to take a moment to recognize, going back to the conversation around, as Byron shared, whether or not the Texas Longhorn Band would be allowed to play the Eyes of Texas. Sharon Scribarchek comments, I agree, traditional Texas themed music should be and not be considered irreverent. This is about Texas. And Melissa Killen also commented, I agree, I don't see a problem with the Eyes of Texas being played. So I want to make sure that we recognized all comments. So Sue-Ann?
Just wanted to respond to George again, that our work is not done. Our assignment has been protect and form, make sure that the guiding principles, the vision and guiding principles are always in place. So that's our job to defend, 2014, and I guess from here moving forward until the entire committee is just. But and in no way do we want you to go away. Okay, none of you. it was just kind of an opportunity if you had to. Now would breaking point. We're hoping everybody can stay on, continue with this, and do our job, which is force and make sure and honor and respect the vision and guiding principle. Still have a job.
Well said, Susan. Thank you.
Hi, this is Erinetta. I don't want to belabor the point. I just want to be have clarification. And Byron, this is maybe directed at you. I'm not clear on reverence. There is, as you know, some controversy about the Eyes of Texas. I think it's been resolved. I'm not sure. Has it?
I believe it, well, I don't know whether it's been resolved in everyone's mind. I think that the campus and UT and the band and the players and everybody have moved on, but yeah, there certainly was an issue about the potential origins of the song and that sort of stuff. But whether it's the Eyes of Texas or the Aggie War Hymn, the issue is sort of the same as to whether it's appropriate to have a military marching band perform like the Army Band of the Southwest, going through there or not. And that's an issue that I think some of the parade organizers still have on the table to discuss.
And your position is?
Well, the Fiesta Commission's position, and that I know certainly of the Flambeau, is that that the Longhorn Band for the Flambeau has always gone through, and the highlight of what it's supposed to do is to play the school song in front of the Alamo, and that was something that the Flambeau specifically bargained about and got assurances about as part of the Alamo plan that went forward. And I think it's in the city agreement with the Fiesta Commission on behalf of those two, of the Battle Flowers and the Flambeau Association. And it was also carried forward in the lease agreement with the GLO that the agreements that were reached would go forward. And of course, things have changed, but I know that was important to the Flambeau. And so as the Fiesta Commission representative here, I'm raising it on their behalf.
And I guess, Francisco, is this something that I should know? That we knew that agreement existed?
Erinetta,
I'm as new as you are, so I can't comment. Lori?
Well, no, and the issue has nothing to do with the Eyes of Texas or the song. What
Right.
Councilwoman
No, I meant the
Viagran,
playing of the music, the
so-
band playing.
and so that's what she's bringing up. That's what the councilman is bringing up. And actually, that's what we presented to City Council when we reinstated the plan in May. So we did say we'd be creating a reverent zone and coming up with how that's defined. This zone and the definition that Councilman Viagran presented to you is something that she's worked on with the Fiesta Commission and the Flambeau and the Battle Flowers organizers, and they're going to work with them on what that means for each of them. And so, yes, this is not new. This was discussed in May as we talked about allowing the parades to continue and that we'd create some type of reverent zone. And what Councilman Viagran was presenting was the work that she has done with the parade organizers. So I don't think anybody's contesting this.
Contesting this.
I don't think the parade organizers are not contesting this.
I don't understand. Contesting what?
The reverency and what was presented by Councilwoman Viagran. They are supportive of it. And what Byron was stating is that we're going to be working with them and each of the parade organizers on what that means for them.
What did that mean for us and this committee when that was just decided that it would be reverent? What did we have any definition of what reverence was?
So that's what Rebecca Villagran presented. And so it meant to make sure that the site was honored, and they needed to come back with what that meant and how it meant. And so Councilman Villagran presented that. And I can't tell if she's on the call. She may have had to step away, but she was part of those discussions.
Andy, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I mean, reverence is something that, in terms of what we're talking about here, is more an issue of what we don't want to happen. Again, it's the amplified music. It's playing songs that are clearly, I mean, inappropriate. It would be not, having the confetti guns. It would not be having a lot of activity around the grandstands in terms of commercial activity. So it's really more about what things we don't want to happen there. And as was mentioned before, we're still working with all the stakeholders in terms of ironing out more specifically what reverence is going to mean for that parade.
Yeah, to be clear, from the Fiesta Commission and for the parades, we're not in disagreement with anything. We just haven't settled on what we all agree on.
Someone?
Thank you. I think, in terms of the conversation, it's, if you look at our guiding principles and we talk about reverence, we talk about, paying reverence to all who lived, fought, and died there. And so it brings me to my concern is that, whether it's Texas theme music or Tejano theme music, I think we need to be careful, because how we move forward today in this process is how the rest of our citizens will treat this space once this project is completed. And I think the idea is to lift this place up just as much for our local residents, our local San Antonians, as it is for those that come from out of state. So I think in terms of music, language, that we have to be very careful how we choose to use the language and the music and things like that are associated. Some of those are not very reverent to some laying underneath the ground there or who spilled their blood there. And so we have to be in the spirit of this work, in the spirit of why we did all these guiding principles, and the spirit of the redoing of the agreement. The slides that you all put up there, what the city said about the agreement, about telling all the stories, then we have to be careful. We have to be very vigilant about what words and music that we allow that may be associated with the killing of some people. Okay, and regardless of their color, I mean, we're trying to be whole about everybody who lived and died and is buried there. I think that's what the guiding principles say. So just like using the word "remember the Alamo," well, those were battle cries. You don't want to. How are our Mexican tourists who come to the fiesta going to feel, or if they're singing a song that is praising the death of your Mexican soldiers? So those are the kinds of things that I think we all need to continue to think about, and at least just give it some thought, because we can deal with it here. We can deal with it on the outside. Either way, it's going to be dealt with. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ramon.
I wouldn't be opposed to the Fiesta Commission working out some sort of, just any band that goes through there should just play a drum cadence. That's sort of reverent and very nice. It's played at Arlington National Cemetery when there's burials and things. And then when it's not bands, maybe you get other high school bands that aren't marching in the parade, bring their drum line, and they march with the floats playing a drum cadence. You get a few more schools involved, and that's very reverent, and it's the same for everybody.
Thoughtful comment. Thank you, Bill. From Davis in the chat, I have no issues with the Eyes of Texas being played. Let's stay focused on the big picture here. Thank you, Davis. Additional perspectives, Erinetta?
Since it is,
Erinetta, sorry, go ahead.
since it is controversial, then perhaps, such as Bill's suggestion, it may be really powerful to let it not be controversial for all people.
George? Thank you, Erinetta. George, you're muted again? And then Forrest. George, still can't hear you. Hang on a second, Forrest. George?
Hello, mic check one.
Now we got you.
Okay, as a musician, I can tell you that all anthems are sonic propaganda. They are sonic symbolisms. So whenever you play Texas Our Texas or The Eyes of Texas or, Dixie or Battle Hymn of the Republic on the other side of the issue, everything is sonic propaganda. And that's what composers and artists do. We make stuff that has an impact on people's emotions. It carries symbolism. It carries our culture. So would it be irreverent to play El de Whale at the Alamo, since that was the battle march and calls of the Mexican army? And so when we get into playing anthems, it starts moving into a very, very emotional and touchy moment. There are anthems of the civil rights movement, anthems of the KKK. I mean, we hear them all the time. Rebel Rouser was one of the biggest songs that the KKK used during the 50s and 60s. And that was the fight song for Robert E. Lee High School. So we get into sonic symbolism and sonic propaganda when we start including specific songs that people identify with them as their anthem. So this is something you have to be aware of. We saw it all during Dream Week. We've been dealing with our anthems of the civil rights movement, and people identify with them. So when you start dealing with something as bipolar as the Alamo issue, and it is a bipolar situation, because people have so many different thoughts on it, and it yin yangs back and forth. Let's just be real careful about bringing sonic propaganda into this public place, but that is already has hundreds of years of controversy.
Kind of coming back to what we heard from Erinetta. Can we have selecting for things that are not controversial to anyone, and to Bill's thoughtful contribution, drum cadences, which steer clear, as you said, George, of really being anthems in that way, and providing for a more universal experience. Forrest, you're muted. It's a equipment issue of some sort on your side. You're showing is unmuted, so. No. You want to keep trying, keep talking? That seemed to work for George. No. Of course, I believe there's a call-in number for the session if you want to dial your audio in remotely. I'm dropping the call-in number into the chat. Actually, can I do that, Ray?
I think you can.
Okay. So Forrest, if you want to try and join by phone, so that way we can hear you directly.
How about now?
Yes, got it. Terrific.
Rebooted. Okay. I was just going to say I agree with Bill somewhat. You know, if there's going to be a lot of controversy on the music selection. I was thinking originally, you know, like if a band selection was going to be played in that one block area or so, that it could be hushed down. People could realize there's a reverent area when the band comes around. The music drops down to a much lower tone, and then it picks back up afterwards, so they could tell that that was in a reverent area. But I guess in the end, maybe if there's going to be a lot of controversy, I don't know, between the city and the commission and stuff, as far as playlists, maybe the drum lines would be the answer to that.
Thank you, Forrest. Additional comment from Davis in the chat. We should not try to dictate which songs can or cannot be played in the plaza area. We'll never all agree. This really is not our purpose. And Davis, fair point. This body doesn't get to set that policy, but as per the invitation of our management committee representative, Councilwoman Villagrán, she's asked for that consultation, and so consultation is being given, and then that body will make the determination going forward.
Francisco,
Any perspectives or Ramon, go ahead.
real quick on what you just said though, but so, you know, some of us are appointed by city council members, and we have a responsibility to go back into our communities and share this information as well, right? To be able to give proper feedback and consultation to our two management representatives for the city. We have to protect the city's, well, we're front lines too for the protection of the city's interests, right? So I think that when we say we don't have that decision making or that purview here on this committee, you're right, we don't as a committee, but as a citizen, we have the right to go out there and express ourselves, you know, to our community, how we felt or why we, and to bring that information forward too.
Absolutely.
So we can do that much. So just thank you for that.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Any other perspectives we haven't heard yet this evening? I want to make sure we get a chance to hear from everyone that's got something they'd like to share. All right, going once.
Francisco?
Matt.
I just wonder if we could pop back up the slide that had the summary of the takeaways from the last working session.
Sure.
Because that just went by pretty quick.
And I believe we provided everyone with the notes. We did, correct, Rhea? The thematic summary. Okay. So you should all have this in your email.
It was something that I think this represents like the collection of all the post-it notes, right? And we tried to create, you guys created themes based on all the the contributions. And I had some conversations afterwards, like as we were kind of, breaking up and we were all talking to each other about the idea of whether the Alamo, as it gets, it's being evolved, and the new fresh, destination, if it's going to be a place where I'll just say history continues to be made. So is it a place where new contributions are made by our residents and by artists, and so is it a living, breathing sort of like a plaza, place for gathering that is a part of the ongoing kind of culture and development of San Antonio, or is it really focused on, because this reverent conversation so really brings it home to me, is it really focused on kind of being a place to remember, to learn about and remember the past? And so that's not expressed here. I have my preference that what is being created combines both together. It honors, preserves the past. It digs into the past. It keeps asking of all of us to examine the past and find out closer and closer to what the truth and the facts are. And it can also deal with the mythologies and the stories. And simultaneously, continues to be this like really vital living place for the residents of San Antonio. And so I just didn't see it expressed here because it wasn't really a specific theme, but it has been things we've talked about in the past. And I would just love to know that a decision from this committee has been made one way or another, right? So that is being advanced forward. And I know I talked to the councilman, I talked to our city attorney about that. And so I know there was interest in that, but anyway, that's why I've asked to look at that again.
No, thanks, Matt. And these are imperfect interpretations of a conglomerate of different Post-it notes that went in, right? So absolutely, and maybe we could have put a finer point on it. The second bullet point, what does this mean and will this mean to the post-battle period and the future, captured that comment. So it may not be as evident in kind of the name we gave the theme, but for sure, for everyone's benefit, every single one of the Post-it note comments was in the retreat proceedings that all of you should have received. So if we got it on a Post-it note, it is documented and you should have a copy. And certainly that was provided to Andy and Councilwoman Villagran. So
thanks for clarifying that that's where that is. Like, yeah, I guess I would love to see it punctuated more, but since it's in the larger body, that's great. Thank you.
And I can tell you, Matt, that's certainly something I heard, and it seemed to be consistent message from across the entire group was that site, no matter what we do with it in terms of the implementation of the plan, continues to be a site that's important to the community, and so its history will continue, and that history obviously will depend on how effectively we can implement the plan and how the community accepts it and uses it to continue the rich history that it's already developed there.
Suran?
And I think it's become very evident even.
Suran, if I could trouble you to pull your mic a little closer to your mouth. You sound very distant.
I am here. Does that work better?
Yes, and speak as loud as you can.
Okay. Since we started with like the 1994 plan, working in the 2014, in that time period, there was an incredible amount of new history, I guess, or new research. And I assume that that's going to continue. I mean, we keep finding out more stories, more truths, more information, partly because some areas are now being researched that weren't being researched. So it has to be a living document. And so going into the future, we're going to continue to know more.
Thank you, Suran. And so I'm actually going to look to now, we're coming up on time. So I will look to Andy and Councilwoman Villagran to kind of offer final comments, since as we've stated, you are the champions that take the council that you hear from this body forward to the management committee, and then we'll look to our other tri-chairs to offer closing comment for the night, and we'll adjourn. So Andy, if I can start with you.
Yes, first of all, thank you, Francisco, for keeping us focused on what we needed to talk about this evening. And thanks again to the entire committee for their continued contributions to the plan and their continued thoughtful comments. I thought the comments and discussion was very productive, and I do appreciate it. I do listen, and me and the councilwoman will continue to take those comments, the themes, into consideration as we work with both the management committee and the city council in implementation. So thanks again, everyone.
Terrific. Thank you, Andy. And actually, Councilwoman Villagrán, we will close with you because I know you're also going to give us a little update on the Museum Planning Committee. So if we could go next to Sue Ann.
I'm just excited, and I hope that all of you will stay on board and with this process come a long way, and much broader, I think, than started even our first discussions, and continue to stick to our vision and guiding principles, our charge. We should have a very good educational product for all of us.
Thank you, Sue Ann. Erinetta?
Let's work together.
Short and sweet. I like it. Thank you very much, Erinetta. And so, Councilwoman Villagrán, if you would close us out for the evening and offer any update that you had in mind for the Museum Planning Committee.
Thank you all so much. And I want to as well thank the tri-chairs and thank you all for your very good conversation. Thank you for your patience with me jumping on and off. And I was listening in, and I am going to be meeting up and circling up, of course, with our city attorney, Andy Segovia. And I'm glad that we were able to get this input and feedback, because this is exactly what we as a management committee members need to hear. All the varying perspectives, all the feedback. And that's why we wanted to bring this portion and in particular up to you all, because it's very significant. So again, thank you for the feedback and all of the great conversation. When it comes to the Alamo, well, the Museum Planning Committee, it is not met again. It will be meeting next month in February 3rd. Now with the outgoing Commissioner DeBerry, we will be having the new Commissioner of Precinct 3. She will, Bernard, she will be joining the Management Committee along with already Commissioner Clay Flores, who is also on the Museum Planning Committee. And our next meeting is scheduled for April 26th. That's why we wanted to make sure we had the Fiesta conversation prior to Fiesta. So again, thank you all so much. And I do ask for your continued support and engagement, because we are still very much engaged in moving forward. And if anything else comes up, we will have to call and bring all of each other together. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.